Hello and welcome to Bear Cafe. I am Barely Caffeinated,
And I am Boba Bear.
and today we are talking about our post-series talk of Dragons of Stormwreck Isle.
Woohoo.
In this review, we're going to talk about the overall story. What did I think as a player, and what did Boba think as a DM? Um, how Thyric was made, and what the campaign suggested for players. Encounters that Thyric had, like combat encounters. Our first initial thoughts as a beginning DM. This is the first time that Boba is DM'd, and the first time that I have been a player. I have been DMing for a little bit now, but this is my first time as a player. Plots in the story that Thyric missed, and what Boba added as a DM. So first, let's talk about how Thyric was made.
That's all you.
So we had to think of a way for Thyric to, first off, get to this island. This island is pretty secluded, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah. Not a whole lot. I mean, there's only a couple like destination points on the island essentially. Yeah, and then it's a small little town of Dragon's Rest, like not a whole lot of people in general, like humans. And then just kobolds. So we had to figure out like what would a dwarf barbarian
Right.
come
Yeah.
there
So
for.
we really had to think about why was Thyric going to be there. And one of the things that the campaign actually suggested, right, was having a character who needs some peace, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
come to Dragon's Rest for
Peace and
peace,
guidance from the leader Runara, yeah.
right? So we kind of decided that, well, one, I kind of wanted Thyric to be a sailor. Two, Thyric had to have some kind of maybe anger problem. In which case, I decided to just simply make him a barbarian because I felt like at a base level that was something that just kind of made sense. And I didn't want to go too deep into character development, but I did want Thyric to be a little bit interesting too. Um, so I guess that's really the base of how Thyric was made. I rolled pretty well on his stats at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Those stats were all rolled. We used the roll 4d6 system and then take the top three numbers and add that as a stat. And I rolled all of those numbers on the very first try. I didn't fib it. I didn't change it. We didn't add
Just
anything
straight
extra.
up luck.
Yeah, it was straight up luck. And if you look at our overlay through our recordings, yeah, that was all luck. That was pure luck. And I feel like throughout the entire series, I rolled pretty lucky a majority of the time when it came to combat. But I feel like I didn't roll too well um, with other things, whether it was like a
Like,
perception check or a history check or anything
other
like that.
checks. Yeah.
So while we're talking about encounters, we're actually going to go to our next point, which is encounters that Thyric had, and we're talking specifically combat-wise. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the first encounter that Thyric had with the Drowned, the encounter with the Harpy, and the last encounter with Sparkrender. So let's talk about the first encounter with the Drowned first. In the campaign, it suggested how many for a full party?
I believe it was 3.
Three, and
Yeah.
and Thyric took 2.
Yeah.
Um,
I decided on 2 because I wanted to already start it off with like a little bit of a challenge, but I wanted to see what you could handle because I knew that you could probably take on 1. But 2, I really just wanted to push you a little bit. And, I had that backup plan, and even the campaign itself has a backup plan in case all of your characters are knocked unconscious. So it was nice that they had it in there. So I knew what I would do in case you happened to die instantly. But I wanted to challenge you right away. So I just decided 2, and it worked out, I guess.
yeah.
You almost died, but
Yeah.
you played it very smart. So
Um, Yeah, and I think in that encounter you actually rolled a nat 20 against me, and
Yeah, I think the first roll was a nat 20 or something, like
yeah,
one of the first
and I
rolls.
still survived. It was a fine encounter. Again, we didn't throw anything. I will say one thing that we did agree on at the very beginning is that Thyric was going to take the maximum health that he could at every single level. So every time he leveled up, he would take the maximum amount that he could.
Oh yeah, so that's right.
Mainly so that there wasn't so much luck at that point. But yeah, all of the levels and stuff were like that were rolled completely.
Okay, so that was like the only thing you fudged for your character.
Yeah, but again, we agreed on that.
Yeah,
Mainly because Thyric is going to have to survive. It's going to be hard if I roll the minimum amount of health that Thyric could have. That's not going to leave much room. So that is something that we agreed on pretty early on. Next, I want to talk about the encounter with the harpy. I truly believe that if I did not have an NPC there, Thyric probably would have died. Because I think I had to make I think it was a wisdom check against the harpy for the song that it sang, and I failed. And I think what the thing says is that I have to be constantly moving towards the harpy,
Yeah.
and even if it attacks me, I'm still stuck under this song until I can roll a wisdom saving throw. I think it was like a 10 or something. It wasn't even very high, but I do think that without Tarek being there, Thyric could have possibly died pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, because your character was very mesmerized by the harpy for a few rounds. And then Tarek really saved you there, which is really tricky. So for what I did for that fight is I kept the harpy. I mean, it did say that if you had a higher level party, you could have two harpies. I wasn't gonna throw two harpies at you as a single player because I knew that if you did get mesmerized and you couldn't fight, you're gonna be screwed. Like, you need somebody to attack it. It would have been kind of boring and pointless. So that's why I tried to encourage taking somebody, and I didn't change anything with the harpy either, because you were taking somebody else. I wanted to see how well you would do, and I think, fortunately you had somebody else. Unfortunately, wasn't too exciting for you because you couldn't do anything for like half the fight. But I kept all the same stats for the harpy. I didn't change any rolls or, that was all just luck and how it played out. So
yeah, and while we're on this topic about the harpy, one of our viewers following, thank you Manga for following, but the question was, it's very strange to watch this combat play out so normally. It's hard to describe. I've been told again and again you need 4 players or a player running 4 characters to be effective in combat, but a single player and a hireling NPC seems to be doing just fine. Did you change any of the stat blocks? Did you depower monsters? Use Did you use Oh my god.
Tactics.
Did you use Lax-tastic? Oh my gosh.
Lax tactics.
Or fudge rolls? What changes have you made to the game to make it run so smoothly with just one player and an NPC? And I think this is, a really big compliment to you as a first-time DM, considering that you were able to do this. But why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about that?
I mean, there's not too much to talk about. I know I left a pretty lengthy comment back, so I'm sorry, because I feel like I am somebody who can talk a lot to explain myself. But I didn't do any of those things, really. I didn't fudge rolls. I maybe once in a while would have a lax tactic, like going easy on you. That's really what it means. But no, I mean, like, I took the rolls how they were, and I tried to play it out as how I thought the combat would turn out naturally, or, who that monster would attack, how they would do. And even the campaign itself, like reading how the combat should be played out, it even tells you for some of the monsters, like, they always start with this attack, where they, like with the zombies, they use their dash to get to the character as fast as they can. stuff like that. So it has some suggestions, and I always did those suggestions because I wanted to make it exciting still. I didn't want to make it too easy on him. And I know you as a player, like as a person. I mean, I know you were going to be strategic with some things. Like you'll find your way around it. So yeah, I tried not to be too lax about things. I tried to make it fair though too, I guess. Because even throughout the campaign, you'd have some questions like, oh, well, can I do this? Like the potion belt kind of thing. You got that idea from another group, and
yeah, I believe I got it from Swindler's Den, which, by the way, I think both of us kind of get our inspiration from them. So Boba getting her DM ideas and kind of getting familiar with how to DM and things like that, and even me as a player by listening to Swindler's Den. So go check them out right up here.
Yeah. But anyway, so oh gosh. What was I talking about the potion belt. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you got the idea of the potion belt just so because you were a single player, to allow you to quickly use your potions in combat instead of using it as an action, use it as a bonus action. And I thought that's fair. Sure. So anything like that to make it easier on him in combat, but the monsters themselves, I didn't change much. I always used, the sheet that was given to me, what's it called? Like cause they don't have a character sheet. They have,
I would call it a character sheet.
Essentially,
like a stat block.
Their stat block. Yeah, I used what was given. I didn't change any of the HP or, the armor class or anything like that. So no, the only thing I would change was maybe the amount of monsters, but I didn't do that too often. Like you ran into sturges sometimes, or like the sturge nest that you ran into. There were supposed to be a lot more sturges coming out of there. I think there was supposed to be like 6 to 8 or something like that. And I knew that you could not handle that on your own, especially if they were all to leech on you. You would have been dead. So I started with, I think maybe 2 or 3 coming out at you, because they have low HP in a somewhat decent armor class. I think it was like 13 for their armor class and like 2 HP or like 1 HP. Like, so as long as you hit them, they would be dead essentially. But I think you were doing really well with the nest. So then I was like, all right, well, 2 more fly out at you. Cause I'm like, hey, well, I'm gonna make you work for it. So yeah, I would change the amount sometimes, but never the stats. And then same with, I was taking Tarek around a lot too. This campaign, a lot of the NPCs, they would give you a character sheet for them. The campaign already had one drawn out for them. So if I ever, and I had those at the ready too. So if he ever asked somebody to come along in the journey, I would just pull that up and those were the stats. I didn't change any of that either. So
yeah, and I do think we had to dial back Tarek a little bit.
Oh yeah, he was pretty.
Because he seemed really strong.
He did. It was the dagger
especially
thing.
For a guy who just kind of works on potions. I don't know.
Just the
really,
gardener.
Yeah, really lethal with.
Let me tell you. Oh, I want to tell you his backstory. He used to be. Oh, because you didn't even look at his tattoos. I forget the details, but I swear he was part of this one gang, like a poison gang. Like he would poison people. Like he was hardcore. He was kind of scary in his past, and I think that's how his wife died, and he kind of blamed himself for his wife dying. Yeah, it's pretty cool, and the hard thing is that I think you tried to talk to him about his past, but it said that if someone brings up his past, then he gets really passive about it, and the more you kept edging him on to talk about it, the more mad he would get at you, and then he would just not like you. He wouldn't be friendly toward you anymore. So yeah, there was a lot to his backstory, but it's sad because you probably never would have figured it out unless you identified his tattoos and then happened to roll a good check on that, and you're like, oh, I've heard of that gang kind of thing. And yeah, so there was a lot more to him, so that explains why he was so hardcore. But yeah, his character was pretty intense, good at combat. Yeah, so we had to dial him back.
Yeah. I actually forgot about an encounter, but the ghoul encounter, uh, that could have went south very quickly. I think because the ghoul has an attack that essentially I think it paralyzes.
Yes.
And I think that if I would have gotten paralyzed, I think is it a Constitution saving throw? We'll have to look it up. But
Something, yeah.
point being, I think for a solo player, that is something that could go south very quickly. Is that if the player is paralyzed and continuously fails their Constitution saving throws, especially if they decide to go something like a mage or something, um, maybe think about not using that. Thankfully, I passed the throw for it, so I didn't get paralyzed. But yeah, I always think about that. It was probably the deadliest fight out of any of the four.
The ghoul?
Yeah,
I don't fully remember that fight. I remember he was like across
it was one
the
of the
ship.
Yeah, it was
And
one of the extra ships.
Because I just wanted to see how you would do with that. I threw that at you.
Oh, so that was an added thing.
Kind of. It was kind of added. So how the ghoul was supposed to be played out was on the main ship, like on the compass rose. He was supposed to be in the lower deck when a zombie was supposed to be attacking the party, and then the ghoul was supposed to be kind of creeping about, waiting until everyone was distracted by the zombie, and then would go in and attack somebody on the outside and paralyze them, and then drag them away while people are still trying to fight the zombie, and they're like, oh, this ghoul is just what? So I didn't want to do that to the two of you. Like, there's
Yeah, I
just
would've
two,
died.
right?
I would've
So, and it
insta
seemed
died.
like, I mean, zombie fights on the ship, I think I would just throw one zombie at you at a time, which fine, but I also wanted you to be okay enough for the harpy fight. So that's why I didn't throw multiple zombies at you or that ghoul. I took that ghoul away because I knew that would be difficult. But instead, since you left and then went back to the ships, I decided to add that ghoul fight on that one ship just to make it a little interesting and to see how you would do. But yeah, I knew that was going to be kind of
I think that helped balance the encounter without, with still keeping the story interesting. And I think you did a really good job of, adding things into the story that makes sense. And I think it really made sense for there to be two other ships. So kudos to you.
That was a suggestion, though, I think. I'm pretty sure. Because, it was totally a suggestion. Because the maps I used, it was part of the campaign. Just saying, like, if you wanted to add this. Like, so the campaign was really, and I think we'll get into this later, but, the campaign was really good about adding some extra suggestions just for us to, like, a DM to expand upon. And one of those was just, hey, if you want to add extra ships, do that. Here are the maps. And that was it. I'm pretty sure it gave the maps, or maybe I found those on, like, in our book, like a basic, basic map. But that was a suggestion. So that wasn't fully my idea, but I did all the treasures and creatures on there. That was all what I wanted to do.
And lastly, I kind of want to talk about the encounter of the spark render. Spark render was way too easy. I think if you're running a party of 4 and you have Adron to help, there is, like, it just felt very anticlimactic with spark render. And the thing with, like, the observatory thing, those were random rolls on a table. For, like, 3 of them were good to assist the players, and I think 2 of them was bad, is what we talked about.
I think 3 of them were really good. 1 of them was bad, and then 1 of them was kind of bad. I think, like, 1 of them, Spark Render took fire damage, and then 1 of them, he just got, like, his lightning breath back. That was it. So
Yeah. I was maybe a little disappointed with the final encounter. Not because I thought you ran it poorly. I thought you ran it fine. I just thought Spark Render was really weak, and like you said, you didn't change any of the stats or anything in there. Spark Render just kind of seemed really, really weak. And I'm trying to think as, like, a beginning player who maybe has never played Dungeons and Dragons or never even listened to campaigns, because I've listened to quite a few, but I don't know. Spark Render just seemed really easy. So easy, in fact, that a barbarian could essentially beat the crap out of him by himself.
Yeah, I mean, you did get a really good start on him by being invisible and sneaking up on him, and then you raged, you took out like half of his health instantly, and honestly, I think his armor class was 17 or something, and that can be hard to hit, but he only had like 52 health, so and you were taking out like sometimes up to 20 hit points in one turn, and you were able to defeat him in a few rounds. So yeah, I do agree.
Definitely doable as a solo player, and I think as a solo player, I guess I was okay with it. It definitely made sense, and I do think it was a good fight, but maybe could have been a little bit more difficult. I don't know, like maybe even just that observatory thing, maybe being a little less positive. I don't know.
Well, here's the thing: is I forced you, and I told you this already, but I forced you into doing that ritual and to seeing the ritual take place because I knew it would be a little bit more exciting, but I didn't realize that so many of those table rolls were so positive for you, and I tried to make it more difficult for you by knocking out your owlbear so you didn't even have his help, but I did give you Adron to help, but then his main big attack is useless against Sparkrunner, like because he also has lightning breath, so he's immune to lightning. So I just felt like you defeated Sparkrunner first, like really easily. And how the campaign was supposed to be run was if he got to below 10 hit points without him dying, like the first encounter with him, he was supposed to fly away. And I decided to let him fly away, even though you said you injured his wing. I was like, I'm going to make it good enough to where he can still get away, just because I wanted him to come back. And it did say that if you were to find Adron, like, if he flew away or you killed him and then you found Adron, or no, if he just flew away, you found Adron, and then you left the observatory, like that would be it. You didn't have to kill him. And like you just went back to Renara and she'd be happy to see Adron again and yay. But if you took a long rest in the observatory, then you were to wake up to the ritual with Sparkrender and Adron tied up, and then you have that extra obstacle of freeing him from the chains, like but since you kind of were sticking around for 3+ hours because you took a few short rests, and you're talking to kobolds, it took you a little while to find Adron. I decided that when you came up from getting Adron, that Sparkrender was going to be there because I wanted you to have that last encounter with him. Just because I felt like it was too easy the first one, and I wanted you to face him again. So yeah. I kind of forced that ritual to happen. And then knocked out your owlbear. If I would have known it would have been that easy, I probably would have thrown in like an extra kobold, like maybe that kobold that was there. Instead of just having him stand there and do nothing, I probably should have had him attack you.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I didn't think it was going to be that easy. I honestly thought I was going to kick your ass, but no, you were fine.
So next, let's